Go.
Ooh, sounds like it's reverbing.
Ready to do it.
Yeah.
You're recording.
We all set?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome. We'll get the meeting started. First up is adjustments or approval of the agenda.
I'm going to move to accept the agenda as presented.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Next up is public comment. Is there anyone here to speak during public comment? Anybody online? Nobody's got their hand up? Trace? Nobody's. Okay. Next up is meeting minutes. Approval of the May 2nd Commissioners' regular meeting minutes.
I'm going to move to approve the minutes of the May 2nd, 2023 Commissioners' regular meeting.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next up, ARP Mission Broadband Report.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Fine.
JD?
So first up, we have the Orland report that we put in front of you. And we have a couple of representatives from Orland here. One online. Eric, that's online. Answer any questions you may have, but we can step through that
Great.
report that we did. So
Yep.
they're asking for the 200,000 contribution. They're matching $50,000 and consolidated. It's who they're going with for. They put in 461,000. And when you look overall, what this is actually going towards, it's for a grant in Maine Connectivity Authority in the August timeframe. So all of this, if you approve this, would be contingent on those other two pieces, the town voting and NCA approval.
When will we find the results? When do we expect the answer to it?
So your town vote is
June 14th.
okay, June 14th on the town vote, and then they have not put specific rules and dates. NCA, that is on. They're telling us August timeframe, so it'll be open for, I'll say, into September, and they will make their decisions in September.
Echo the bay thing.
Yeah. But the hook's going in.
So we're not sure of when they're, would award it. I would say early fall.
Does Orland need our approval today in order to apply for other grants?
When you say specifically today, not necessarily today, but before that grant.
Yeah, right. In other words, they need to say that we
We
have.
have that money secured.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And I'm sure this goes to town meeting.
Our contribution, our
Yes.
towns, yes, on June 14th.
Yeah, so that's why they're trying to
Yeah.
line that up.
Exactly. And the rules, the guidelines from MCA, they're telling us are going to be out in June timeframe this year. So everybody will be able to scrambling around the state trying to figure out what are the rules for that grant round.
And JD, this will give coverage to the full town.
It will. Yeah, 100% of the town. And what that map's a little confusing because of the colors, but that's just how they will build it. It's all of the roads.
And right now, we have 656 underserved or unserved.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
According to the
Yeah.
latest maps that we can look at.
And this is all consistent with everything we've been trying to do and have done in the past,
That's
correct?
correct.
JD?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
When you-
that's
when you
correct.
look at the percentage of unserved, we've kind of how we've allocated money in the past. This is like, to me, a nice win
Yeah,
for us.
it's the
like
biggest-
it's covered, to cover the area really well, so definitely is nice.
When you say, in other words, for 200,000, we're giving 100% coverage to the town. We're making that possible. Yeah.
And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but back when we were looking at the cost per this is probably under that because we're getting to 100% where we.
Yes.
Passed.
Well, I'm gonna move to approve contributing $200,000 from the county's ARPA funds towards the town of Orland's fiber network project, provided they receive the necessary funding from the town, from Consolidated Communications, and from the MCA grant. Is that sufficient, JD?
That is exactly right.
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Ready to vote? Michael, nothing to add. We're ready to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, congratulate our town of Orland, congratulate you people on doing the work on that. We're
Thank
pleased
you.
to see
Getting it
that.
all
It's
together.
been a
Yeah.
pleasure for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
You're welcome.
Uh,
Yeah, they put in a lot of effort. That's good.
Okay, we sort of jumped into B there. Next up is Mission Broadband Draft Proposal Countywide RFP for Broadband Network. Judy?
Yes, sir. So, this is a kind of an ongoing conversation. Talking about, the idea of, I'll call it our idea. Of, I've sat back a little bit this last month, last time we met. And tried to look at it from some of the comments guys had mentioned last time, because I'm looking at it, okay, how do you solve broadband? Right? For me, it's straightforward. I look at rooftops on a map and I take out some spreadsheets and say, okay, here's how we can do it, with the work that we've done so far. Then I heard what you guys said, and say, okay, what's in it? How are the towns looking at it, right? How would they come to it? How would the commissioners work with the towns on this project? If you will work with the towns, how does that all come about? So, step back, gave you that spreadsheet that also talks about, here's the ones that you've done so far. Orland's on there as pending. Open active ones that we are aware of that we've spoken to in the past that, have had interest. And then trying to give you an idea of, the number of unserved locations in that area for those towns. And then the ones that we have spoken to and they didn't seem to be interested and or had another solution that they were working on.
And which ones are those, JD?
You talking about this?
No, sorry.
You're talking about this one, right? On this list,
When we have the status is open, what constitutes that you're considering it open? So we kind of understand.
So they have not solved the issue of broadband, although they have been working on it. So I put that in the open category.
so the open active broadband projects, people who have, they have committees, that
They
towns are
have
working
in the
on.
past have tried to, I think a good one there is Bar Harbor, right? They've tried for years now. But it's, when you look at that percentage of 251 homes to, 2,500, it's such a small percentage, it's hard for them to create a project around that, to get some good grant funding because it's just
So small.
too small, right? It's too small. So they just kind of keep going. And I will step back into, 50,000 foot look for the state, right? Maine Connectivity Authority. They got one goal, that they have to solve broadband. And all those red dot maps, I showed you the other day, all those rooftops that don't have access, that's their job, right? The money that's coming in, we don't know the hundreds of millions just yet, the number, we'll know later this year, but, their job is that. So I look at this as saying, okay, with this project that we have going with commissioners, is there a way that we can, amplify that, help everybody that doesn't have broadband? So that's another kind of angle that I look at it. So the open active projects, the unserved locations, you have kind of your listings there.
Okay, so the no active projects, are these people that just not interested?
When we spoke to them, they were not interested. And I forget about Frenchboro might have a solution, Sullivan might have had actually a different solution. We would, if we were to move forward and with your understanding, we could reach out to them again and say, okay, here's the plan. Are you interested?
So what's the served community? What's this remaining list? Would
So
you-
served is that there's no need to look at those. Those are all the communities that have 100% broadband coverage.
That we've either contributed to, they've come up with their own projects.
Those are all, the service providers that come up. Yep. That's,
So when I do the math on it, to me, it's around I had 1,663 under that open active broadband project section. And then 209 under the no active broadband project for unserved.
it's not a real,
That's the
sorry.
rough idea of that numbers.
It's not a real large project, the challenge, if you remember that map, it was just where they are, right?
Yeah.
It's just these
Oh, yeah.
individual places. I mean, there are, Greensboro and Winter Harbor have a strong committee that's been going for a while now, and they're getting some work with MCA. That's a big swath area, but a lot of these are just neighborhoods, right? The neighborhoods in different areas.
So what your idea is, basically is put out an RFP that says, okay, basically, we're looking at from no active projects up on that spreadsheet.
The 1,700 or whatever,
Yeah, the open active section. Yep.
and that's 17, what'd you say?
Oh, the open act, approved, that's right, just open active.
Yeah.
And
1,872.
1872 is the second category.
That's all, that's the open active broadband was 63, and the no active broadband project was 209.
203.
Sorry.
Oh, I see, yeah. So you're including the, you're including it, yeah, okay, yeah. So, this RFP, JD, a successful bidder gets what? The ability to,
Yeah, so this would be in conjunction, right? I propose that this is conjunction with MCA. And saying, okay, here's our idea, here's what the commissioners are willing to support. What are you willing to support? And how do we, in the RFP itself, would go out, right, and just say, okay, here's all the rooftops that need broadband. And
what are
winning
we,
bidders
what
would
are we
be,
supporting short of, besides the selecting a vendor?
I'm sorry.
What is it we're committing ourselves to under this RFP project beyond selecting a vendor?
So-
Funds?
Yeah, so then it would be, okay, this is what we're trying to get to, the allocation of those ARPA funds, right? I think that's, we're kind of at that point where it says, okay, are we closing this project now? Right, by the end of the year, say, because it's one more grant round, right? And then whatever money is left over, you put someplace else. Or do we look at it and say, okay, who's ever applying this grant round, okay, but we have this funding. And so to keep that funding set aside, if you will, do this RFP process, figure out who the winning vendor, because it'll be probably more than one vendor, there'll be multiple vendors that win certain areas, right? And then they would apply for an MCA grant next year. And your monies would support that grant application.
See, I still don't understand, our monies, we don't know what that amount is?
You would set it, I'm saying, in
Well-
this case, right? So what we're saying is we're kind of like, we'll just use that example we just did, right? They're going for a grant for $3 million, I believe. You're putting $200,000 towards that, application. What we're saying now is we've got a bigger picture look. You've got, call it 3 million, I don't get the numbers. You're putting $3 million towards some grant applications. It's not specific per town necessarily anymore. It's just more of a broader view of saying, okay, well, this is the money that we have. We're willing to go through this process. We're willing to have some grant match at the end if it works. And if it doesn't work, then that money goes back into the pool. So,
Who are we going to target beyond the 1,872?
That's it.
That's it.
Pardon? Is that it?
That you're,
That's it.
any of these active towns that want to do it, that's it.
Yeah, because they're the only ones that are left uncertain, underserved, or uncertain.
Unserved.
Why would we spend $3 million to serve 1,800 people?
Well, so this is, that's where I think we have to go.
Yeah.
Is, and I think that's JD's question.
I'd make that number up, just knowing.
Yeah, so I was thinking, I don't have the number in front of me, but we had allocated what, 5.4, and we've spent,
782,000 on just the broadband projects,
okay,
including today's Orland.
that was, okay, and,
And that's, excuse me, that's everything though?
Yep, on the broadband, just broadband.
I mean, that's consultancies, that's everybody?
yes,
Wait a minute, I don't look,
No, that's just the broadband to the
now,
towns.
how much total for, well, JD's fees for, how much we spent on our broadband projects for everything?
Gonna add, gonna add roughly 60 to that.
Yeah, that's what I was-
Around, around 485,000,
Total?
Yep.
In addition to
plus the,
700 and something?
No, on projects, we spent around 782.
782 committed, so
Yeah.
582 plus JD
60.
is 60 committed, yeah.
Is there any other expenses related to broadband?
Nope, that's all the projects.
So that's a total of what? 830, something?
840,
840,
842.
842.
Okay, so this is where I was going, because this is the question, right? Top of my head, I didn't do this math that we just did, but I had $1 million that we
Yeah,
spent
right, that's right.
Okay.
That's generally where I was at, yeah.
in round numbers.
Right.
And what I was trying to do is, that $1 million we've served, this is where I'm having trouble. How many people has that $1 million bought? So I was just gonna create a formula that says, okay, you know, this is what we've spent, this is how much it cost each one, and allocate that number to those 1,866.
Sure.
And the reason I'm doing that, because I do think it's unreasonable to out of 5.4, put 4.4 to 1,800 people. That's, to me, that's not prudent.
The only problem is, if I understand JD right, though, people we've served came in kind of groups that made the economy of scale work. In other words, we had people who were cheaper to serve as a group. Now we're talking about here and there and those isolated areas that's going to be more expensive to serve, JD.
It could,
But we don't
depend-
know that.
Well, I mean, the fact that you've only got 1,800 in as much as 12 towns tells you that they're going to be quite sporadic.
They will, but depending on the provider, they might be able to expand their network as opposed to trying to build something new.
And I like your theory, if we can come up with that and whatnot. I'm willing to just add a few more bucks to that to make
Oh,
the economy of scale work, that's all.
totally agree. I'm just looking for a place to start. I don't think the start is 4.4.
So right now, we've served like 1,275 underserved, if you look at the approved projects. And we're trying to get to 1,800 or whatever it was.
Okay, so we've spent,
If we look at it like
Well, that's
that.
another million and a half.
Like 1.5 million.
so,
It's another 1.5 then to get to 1,800.
so we've spent $1 million to serve 1,275, is that about right? So,
700 something, was it?
so 784
So it's 800,000 to serve 1,800 people.
times.
30.
Times.
You serve 30.
13?
Yeah. We've
Oh, 13, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
40,
served
40, sorry.
So basically, again, I'm rounding up every time. So, so that's basically 1.5.
Okay. Yep.
You see what
I do.
we just did?
Yeah, I do. And that kind of, falls in line, if you will, with kind of some of the grant, the way they do their allocations, like they need so many dollars for a household, so.
And the reason I'm rounding like I am is because, there's expenses like we had here in getting there. So,
It's another 40,000 for Mission Broadband's consulting fee, so we're adding that to that?
yes, because I'm adding, well, there's some of that built into that 784 per customer. But if you just do the straight math of 784 times 1866, you get 1.46. So to
Well, it's
me,
1.5 when you add the 40,000 from the Mission Broadband's consulting fee.
well, that's already somewhat built in, but we're further padding. in that 784 is JD's expenses.
That's right. That's right. That's.
Yeah, so that's why I think that, because I,
1.5 is a good number.
because I think that's one of your primary questions here today. isn't it?
Well, if we, and if this, you know, commissioners think it's a good idea, right? The other thing is we, again, as I say, close the project down at the end of the year.
Well,
What's left is left, right?
to me, I think it's a good idea because that was one of our goals in the beginning. This may turn out to be a more efficient way than
Yes.
what we were doing, but you know, that's because we learned along the way.
And the industry has changed.
Yeah,
Like I was at Ellsworth City Council meeting last night, right? We were gonna go to RFP with them a couple months ago, the end of last year, and I said, stop. Don't spend the money, because Consolidated came in here, Spectrum came in here, you've got Net on one side, you've got Premium Choice coming in from Dedham, and they were served, right? So it's like, you don't do this, right? The industry has changed so much, and, you know, Spectrum has come out, that's kind of another good timing of this. They're spending $70 million in the state to upgrade their existing network, which is good, doesn't expand, but the existing is good. And then, you know, MCA is also working on grant programs, as the Commissioner was pointing out, where these people can expand their networks. It's not always a new build, right? So that's why I say we gotta work. Any commitment that we're making right now, I'll say is a soft commitment until we continue to bring MCA along and say, okay, is this going to work for them as well?
See, for the first time since we've done this, I start to feel that we've now nailed down what our contribution should be, because that 5.4 was a death row.
It was.
You know,
well, and we knew it.
Yeah, and in fact, I think John said, and we all agreed with John, that we'll spend that first year easy. You know what I mean? So we didn't even know what we were doing.
Yeah.
So now we do.
Yep.
And I'd like to see the 1.5 constitute the budget for broadband for everything and remove the balance. And talk about what we're gonna do with it, other projects or what else we're gonna do.
Well, and I think, you know, one of our worries has been, okay, when does this end?
Exactly.
And as a consultant, you're probably wondering when it ends.
Why wouldn't it? He's got an open checkbook.
No, but you know what I'm saying.
No,
Yeah, yeah. So I think this, you know, this is a way to, you know, we have a goal, and it is easy to beat up on ourselves in the beginning, but really there was no other way to learn.
You gotta start. You had to start. And, you know, again, one of the reasons I put in there, we're not looking for a vote or a decision today necessarily. An indication, and I'll continue to go back to MCA and make sure that this makes sense for them. So I present that before you guys, or you would vote contingent on it, just going forward, either way you want to do it. But I want to be fair to you guys, that this needs to be a collaboration, you know, with MCA, otherwise.
I'd like to make this formal enough so that it's memorialized, that we don't somehow lose. This 1.5 to me feels right. And
The
we
number,
can always change it later if we have new information or whatever, but I really would like to memorialize this in a motion today that this is the balance of our broadband projects.
well, so that's the first question is what's the balance? The second question what's the methodology? And I think JD's outlined what I think is a good tack, because I don't have another one.
Okay. Yeah, we would.
I don't know how. John, you seem to be in agreement. Bill, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, I'm prepared today to approve Mission Broadband going out to RFP for this, whatever you're gonna call this project, JD, something, whatever, we're gonna name it.
Well, maybe.
And that we, what's the word I want to use? Raise, contribute
Hey, Julie,
1.5 million,
I thought the door was locked.
contribute
Sorry.
1.5 million to the RFP project, however.
Yeah.
Well, I think what you're looking for is buy-in on the concept and buy-in on the dollar. I'm not sure we need to get any more specific than that because we don't have anything more. You need to talk to MCA before we really do.
Right, let me talk a little bit about timelines and a couple of things there too. So this is not, I talked about a grant round in August. This is not in the August grant round. right? So there's another influx of money coming called BEAD money, right? And the state of Maine is scheduled to get, they're hoping around $250 million, to try to help solve the rest of the broadband in the state of Maine. That will not hit the streets until next year. And this process will take some time, right? We want it to, right? We want to make sure that we're making sense with it. So, this is a next year spend, just so you're aware of that.
So what do you think, we should do today? Nothing, JD? Just by general consensus, you know what?
If you're comfortable saying yes, go ahead and start moving forward with this, I will continue conversation with the MCA.
I would,
Some time, mull it over and I'll be back in a couple of weeks and want to vote down.
I think by consensus, we're saying that we're good with 1.5 million. I don't think, maybe we're not the spot where we're actually making the motion for the RFP.
Yeah, but if I understand it, the RFP requires us to designate an amount that we're going to spend.
Yes. it would be
So in other words,
good
we
for-
wouldn't do the RFP and leave that open because we need to
Yeah.
designate some amount, what our contribution is, and how much money would that generate from other sources, correct, JD?
Correct.
So it's almost a twofer. You gotta do them both at the same time when we get ready to do it.
well, do you feel that, our back of the napkin, it's a little more back of the napkin, but what we've done, does that
I think
make sense?
it does. It aligns well with how and consistent, right, with how this project has gone to date. You've done that math, we said, okay, here's what it is. And that is, contribution. To my understanding right now, you're the only county in the state that is moving forward with, this type of contribution, or this even project starting a year and a half ago.
Is, I think it's consistent with our goal.
Yes,
Is it consistent with how the other people coming to the table are, MCA? Is it consistent with their methodology?
yes, and that's why I want to continue talking to them to see if you're going to use a traditional grant program, or is there a unique grant program for something that they, or blend of what they've been doing right now. But yes, because they are, I'll say required, but when you look at some of the art rules, but also certainly the BEAD money, which is we're going to fall under, there is absolutely a 25% grant that has to come from something, or whatever that grant process will be.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like we're ready for action. It sounds like, you need to do some talking. And then, but at least you have some guidelines, which I think is what you were looking
I
for.
can bring that to MCA and say, hey, generally we have, 1 point. roughly.
And he has a methodology to kind of support saying, this is where the commissioner's at, here's why, and is this palatable to you? And if so, under what framework can you make this work?
Okay, and you're fine with,
Yeah, I do think there's still some questions about how we get from point A to point B, but in terms of right now, at least saying, yeah, we're committed to trying to come up with this RFP and proceeding, and here's the amount of money, that makes total sense, I think, today.
great. So,
And is it safe to say that if we do this, that's it, that's the last project that we're going to have available to us to assist these senators?
For this, yes.
and really, this has been alive for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. And,
Yeah, I mean, you have stipulations on how, right, that has to be
Yeah.
allocated.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, commissioners. One quick full disclosure comment. You have coming up later on your agenda, with the IT folks in the airport.
Yep.
And they're working on, so I didn't know, our name's gonna come up again.
Yeah. Well, that,
So-
and that is not in here.
What's that?
That has nothing to do with.
This is not, it's a completely separate
Different
project,
subject.
Michael set us up with, but I didn't want you to think, I don't want to think that we're gouging for commissioners in any way, it's just.
Well, we'll talk about that one.
Yeah.
JD just want to help us out.
Just one full disclosure.
Taking good care of the business.
Yeah.
Good job, JD.
Thank you.
Right. I don't think you accept them.
Yeah, do we want to accept that report, accept the file that report?
Well,
I don't,
we talked about it. We don't think it's a report so much as it's a preview of what we're going to be discussing. So we're not,
because he gave us
we don't really see a report on what he's done. It was more or less on what we were gonna talk about today, so we're not gonna consider that a report.
So we sort of, that's why I made the comment, we want A sort of split into B.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Town of Brooklyn request for ARPA funding related to the Hales Hill Road.
Think we have anybody online either, but, so essentially, I'm starting to get these requests, and I had another one after they saw this agenda, like, we know this is how the process works. Another community said, well, wait a minute, you're considering giving money to these towns, do we have a way of doing this? Well, I mean, at this moment, just as I explained the answer that I gave back, and I think I copied Paul on that, I gave back to them was, we don't have a program set aside for existing municipalities with these things yet, but municipalities are coming to us, and I give it back to the commissioners, and you decide if there's something that you want to consider, or if there's additional information you need. So I was approached by the select board, a couple members from Brooklyn who came in and met with me and kind of outlined 4 or 5 different things, but this particular project was one that they had interest in and need to come up with a way to meet that match. So I told them, submit all your information, put together a proposal package, and I'll send it to commissioners, and we'll see what the response is. But it's kind of a twofold thing. So one is what you have in front of you here, but I think at some point it would help us or me to have some direction. Does the county commissioners really want to, I mean, do you want to address this in a fashion, or do you want to try to create some type of program to wholesale kind of get everybody submitted and then evaluate proposals and see? So really the strategy is how you want to continue to approach these as well, I guess.
My feeling is, we had one more request earlier.
Yeah.
MDI school, and we have this one. And so I've been thinking about this, how do we, is it, first come, first serve, or, what do we do? And are we interested in doing this at all? To me, one of the most equitable things that we can do for all the communities in this county is do things that make improvements that are required here, county government, so that assessment doesn't have to increase. And that takes care of everybody equitably. Now, have we identified all those projects? No, we haven't. But, we've got a couple that, we may be able to use some of this. So those are my thoughts. I just don't like, pitting one community against the other. And that's exactly what this is going to do, and we're proving it. That email from that county is a perfect example.
I mean, as you stated, it's really, if you're using this philosophy, it's first come, first served to really an unadvertised, and then there's no criteria really, other than whatever it is that you come up with to evaluate these at the moment. So there's no pre-criteria, I guess is what I should say.
So in a nutshell, that makes me feel uncomfortable with this project, just as it did the previous one.
Gentlemen, we've been through this before, because the same thing happened with our community benefits money, if you remember. We started getting requests for that, and we said, is this a first come, first serve? I mean, how do we dispense this out? And there was no equitable way for the communities to apply for this. It's like, who could get to us first? And we decided not to do that, that we'd set up grant programs if there was some, but not to pick and choose who's going to get a CPA money. And I think you're right, Paul. I'd like to see this ARPA money serve everybody equitably. And when you start giving 2.3 million to MDI High School and for their sewer repair and, and whatever they're asking here, 600, huh? Yeah, then, and I can tell you, we thought the money was gonna go fast with broadband, start telling the towns we'll help you pay your construction repairs and
And each community has project
Or
like
you
this.
just
Like
sure.
every single one.
Just imagine. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
there's
I-
no doubt.
And I think the message that we need to have is that we're not funding individual county town projects. I think that's what Michael's looking for. If we're not gonna have a program to support them, that Michael should get that, be able to tell them that if they apply, so. Yeah, rather than deny these one at a time, I think we really need to decide whether or not we're gonna have, how much we're gonna have, if any.
Well, and so the next question is, where do we go from here? You know, because there is that pool of money. And, you know, for specific purposes, where do we go from here? And, maybe we need some ideas from you, Michael, and, in conjunction with Kitty, and, because we do need to get to where Michael's asking
You
us to
see,
go.
we've never had this dedicated discussion about establishing, we keep calling it a budget, but, pigeonhole where we're going to spend this money.
Well, we did
Yeah,
with
we just
broadband,
had one earmark.
yeah,
Well,
and
yeah, but
So now we've changed that earmark to 1.5. to us.
we've got 6 or 7 billion undedicated for anything. And I would like to have that discussion because I think maybe we all three of us have got some ideas in the back of the head on where we'd like to plug in some of this money under a category, maybe not a particular project, but a category. And one of mine is those projects that we want to do for the county that would save the taxpayer having to fund those for
Exactly.
that property tax. So
Some of that's tied back into like the capital improvement plans, taking a look at what we've already kind of laid out and all that, rather than just kind of projects are coming along and each department also says, well, I need this now, or I can see this, so now let's put this in there too. So I agree. I think we need to look at it as, or you need to look at it as a kind of a global, how much is the pot of money, and then try to narrow down where you feel the priorities are for the county. And obviously, I mean, individually, I can go solicit that from other departments as well. I mean, we can come up with ideas for projects that we feel are going to be something that are 5 to 10 years out, that are going to serve the communities ultimately, because the county is going to be made whole to be able to provide something for services, so.
well, specifically, I'd like to deny this project motion, but then by general consensus, tell Michael that we're not going to fund the specific projects within the communities and whatnot by individual. We may at some point come up with some kind of a program to help them with these, but today, in fact, I will move, I'm going to move to deny the town of Brooklyn's request for financial support for their Hales Hill Road project. That's my motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye. And by general
So
consensus,
unanimous.
yep, by general consensus, Michael, basically, we're telling Michael, let them know that this will be our stance on any future request until we decide to come up with some kind of a grant program or a competitive bidding program or something. But
Okay.
Well, and, I think Michael is also asking for direction, where do we go next at the county level? Based on what we, and to me, one of the first things might be a staff meeting where, you come up with a, little bit of a, I don't know what to call it, but capital improvement program, to use your words. What needs to be done? What needs to, and then have that as part of a workshop and say, okay, with the caveat that, it's got to benefit,
Yeah.
our county municipalities. Does that sound? And I think that's the first bit of homework, and then it needs to expand to us.
Yeah, if I understand correctly, obviously you're looking at, in addition to whatever that you may have on your own for ideas for projects, obviously us to bring something to the table for you to actually have kind of a substantive discussion to maybe set aside. And we may have some themes. You may see certain things
Exactly.
fall in. So then Bill says, yeah, I think we need a category for this. Or, John says, I think we need a category for that. And then we home in onto the specific projects from there.
Yeah,
That's exactly what I'd like to see us do with the balance of our ARPA funds.
and I think, I don't think that's gonna be tomorrow. I think just, at the staff level, that's
Yeah.
probably gonna take a month or two.
Yeah, I mean, I'll approach it this Thursday when we meet, but it'll probably be, probably until the end of the next month's meeting where we actually have some definitive, probably in writing type of projects to come back to, so.
Yeah, and you may find amongst staff, there's, my guess is that there will be.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, we gotta stop procrastinating because this,
Yeah.
this date, this date's gonna come up that we're gonna have to either decide or give the money back.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have a big EMA project that's happening, and we don't know exactly where. That's something that's gonna benefit the whole county, and there's gonna be aspects of that that we don't even quite know yet, right? The next 6 months, we're gonna be figuring out that
Mhm.
there's obviously gonna be opportunities with that project for the county.
Yeah.
And that could be,
Piggyback on in some ways.
that's absolutely right, because that could be the catalyst for deciding where a lot of this money's coming out.
So I think a goal might be that, we're tackling a workshop like that early fall, late summer. Is that? Because I think that needs a month or two to. Is that?
Yeah, and I would just say, obviously, I think we want to get into it before we start getting into the bulk of the budget stuff.
Yes.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, and there may be some issues that as a result of that process may tie back into this, but
Yeah.
I think it needs to be before the budget.
Yeah.
But it being close to the budget is not a bad thing.
And I think John's right, I think this EOC project could be the catalyst for getting us together and deciding where this is.
Yeah, there might be some IT ramifications. There's a whole host of things.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, next up, maintenance. Request approval to hire Wolf Von Hancock. Do I have that right? Hancock, Dedham as part-time janitor, effective May 13th, step 5A, 1618.
So moved.
Seconded.
Dennis, any comments or?
Thank you.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion here? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So, unanimous. Sheriff's steps discussion.
Yes. After the meeting 2 weeks ago, I immediately called Sealander and let him know the county's position on this project, and he did respond yesterday and kind of typifies the problem that we've been having. It's unresponsive, but, is willing, accepts the conditions and is willing to cooperate any way he can. Immediately after that, I called Gardner, the contractor, and said, are you willing to work with the county or a different architect or designer? And they said, yes. They said, we'll work with anyone who gives us the tools we need to do the job. And so then I asked, what are those tools specifically? And the response was design, detail, and features that were missing in the original. So I called Lewis and Mom. They created the documents upon which Sealander began his work years ago with the RCC renovation, as you may recall. And they listened to the list of Gardner's requests and said that they could easily satisfy those terms and came up with design features that would address the problems of drainage and the problem of the lack of detail with the snow melt system as well. So as it stands now, my recommendation would be to engage Lewis and Mom in making these plan corrections. And if Gardner's willing, go forward. If not, similar to the approach we took on the RCC project, find a contractor who is willing to move forward and move forward.
Well, so if you engage them, my guess is that the two are gonna work together to get what they need.
Yes.
Then we'll have a document. If it all goes to pot, at least we'll be left with a document, a construction document somehow could be utilized.
Yes, we could go to bid with or find another vendor, however we choose to proceed.
That's my question is, what's their charge to,
Yeah, well, I haven't formally notified them till
yeah,
we spoke today.
No, I don't think there's any action item, but I think that, you know, Dennis is looking for, you know, where to go next and
Well, wait a minute, if Gardner's willing to go forward, given an architect they can work with and give them the right designs and whatnot, is that a project that Gardner still has on the, on?
They told me in August they might have time to
So
do this.
this is time sensitive, gentlemen. I think given this situation, it's an emergency enough for us today to authorize Dennis, for us to enlist the services of Lewis and Mum for architectural services for the jail, the sheriff stairs project. And get them on board with Dennis and Gardner and get this job done. I don't think we can't wait weeks and months. It's gonna be in the next year again.
no, I think it needs to be right off, but I think Dennis needs to know how much it's gonna cost.
Well, we know what Lewis and Mom's fees are. I mean, they aren't outrageous. They're gonna be.
It's gonna be
traditional.
similar to
Yeah.
what Sealander.
We know that. We've used them several times.
So-
We left Lewis and Mom, went to Mike now, so I mean, they're gonna be competitive. And I'm not concerned, I personally am not concerned about the fee. I think that fee is gonna be the same fee we would have paid Mike to correct the situation that he appears to be unwilling to do. So
I do think it would be comparable, and I do know that Lewis and Mump is prepared to create financials if desired as well. And
So.
he has already polled his team, engineers, and so forth, and they are willing to.
Is it unreasonable to ask for an estimate from them and if not, is the first meeting in June gonna slow you down? If it is, then that's another.
Maybe.
listen, I would make the motion that we enlist the services of Lewis and Mom for architectural services, provided that fees are unacceptable. And let Dennis decide that if they're acceptable, let's get them going. That's your concern. Dennis knows he knows what we're paying Mike.
So that sounds like a motion that may be supported. Is that a motion?
I haven't got it done yet. I got to,
Is that what you?
It is, the key, I think, is to put, as you suggested, Gardner and Lewis and Mump together so they can get. And the fee schedule we pay Sealander is, well, it's been over several unfruitful endeavors, and so it seems like any fee would be reasonable and comparable, but if you wanted to set a cap on it of 30 to 50,000 for design fees, I'm sure that we'd be there, but that's where I would estimate it today, top of my head, no promises, but
And this was an ARPA project, right?
Well, there was 90,750 approved for the construction project. But as far as the Sealander,
Piece.
that's not, there's nothing in there right now unless it comes out of that.
because we were going on a previous authorization
Right.
of unused funds is how we've been paying that you'd already allocated. So that's what I alluded to when I said it's a little confusing.
So it may have to come out of, because I think you have steps projects in your capital plan. Do you
Yeah.
not?
I do.
So,
the 90,000 was what we'd set aside from ARPA for the project.
yes,
Construction.
yes.
Yeah.
But that's not cast in stone. Nothing says we can't increase the
That's right.
90,000.
That's right.
So I think if we could get it fees out of ARPA, we should be taking them out of ARPA. So
Yeah.
I'm not concerned. You could come back to us, Colleen, with an amendment to that 90,000, right?
Yep, whatever he, yep.
Let's say we look for an accurate figure and we'll present that when it's available.
So I'm going to move to enlist the services of Lewis and Mann for architectural services for the sheriff's step project, provided the fees do not exceed $30,000.
Will it assume on conjunction with, or that assumed in conjunction with.
That assumed at this time, I think,
Okay,
if,
so you're all right with it.
yeah,
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? Michael, Monica, anybody? Everybody's okay? Ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
So unanimous.
thank you, gentlemen. And I think this may change its form over the next number of weeks and I'll be posted as developments occur.
Next up is request approval, to update repair of the fence between the county property and Ruth Foster's residence.
Yes. I got a call from Mrs. Foster the other day and if you'll recall, we'd already penned some money for this project. But then the future of that property came into question with respect to our use of it. And why would we put a fence up there if we're just gonna tear it down in the next year? So, which,
Or five. or whatever.
sure, but that's not, obviously not gonna happen at this point or anytime soon, I don't think. So I'm looking either to repair the fence to a serious degree or replace it. And
What about?
based on the information I have,
Can't we move it? Ruth wants the fence there.
she wants the fence, she likes the barrier between she and the jail. It was a part of, when she built this fence, it was the idea that the county would maintain it to give her relief from the jail being built there at that time. So
At this point, though, the only thing, there's a couple panels that need to be straightened up and set in place.
I mean, I did some of that work yesterday, but they're rotting.
Because I'm not ready yet willing to throw in the towel on acquisition of some of that land up there. But I think,
I think it sure makes perfect sense.
So you're asking for approval. What are we talking about?
If we're gonna repair it, I would say 15 to 20,000, we get the job done. To replace it, it's 60 was my previous estimate.
what do we do with 20,000?
We're going to reset and replace maybe a dozen or 15 panels instead of the 40, which are there.
Is the thing gonna blow over in the next 12 months?
Well, this is what happened, is that it was blowing and banging. And it blew a section off, and this section itself had been ill repaired in the past. And then the pickets blow out. And
Are you doing the work or who's doing the work?
I would find a fence vendor
Okay.
to look at it, if we're gonna do a wholesale improvement from here to here, so to satisfy her
So
aesthetic desires.
what about this tack, getting, I mean, there's a few fence companies getting, bids to replace and bids to repair
Sure.
and reconsider it then, or, I thought, I don't like the fence. I think it would look better open, but she is next to the jail, so I get that.
Yeah, me too. I think it would be much.
Plus, it's probably a good barrier for the jail too.
Well, and when it's solid, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, if there are future plans or future designs on the property, maybe a third of the fence might satisfy her. And if that was the case, I'd be happy to do.
Just,
Yeah,
I agree
speak for it.
to let him go to bid on repair and replacement. I gotta think, so I just,
Yep,
Yeah, I mean, do you have a recommendation?
no, if it looks like you're willing to take action if needed, but we really don't know what action is gonna be necessary or best at this time. I think if we just did something that's a fairly thorough repair of the pieces nearby or within sight of her house, she might be satisfied. I'd be happy to ask her if that would do for now, and if so, that's the direction we take.
Just far less than $20,000.
Right, it would be a matter of replacing maybe one or two panels.
Okay.
And bolting it all back together, it'd be a Band-Aid, but
Why don't we just do that anyways?
Well, or so why don't we, yeah, and then when he's got an
let's do
idea,
that.
an idea of what
Well,
we
it's
take
just-
action on, then we do it then.
You know, let's just do that Band-Aid right now and see what we think so.
How tall's the fence?
It's 8 foot sections. That's the trouble, John. Usually typically those pickets are 8 foot by 6 foot. These are 8 feet by 8 feet, quite a lot to handle.
And the solid, so it's a wind resistant issue too.
Yes,
Say it.
yeah, right.
So,
But it's protected on her side with vegetation. On our side, she's got lilacs all along up till you get into the,
Okay,
closest to jail.
so it sounds like you're gonna come to us with a proposal.
no.
No,
he's
I'm gonna-
Do a Band-Aid. He's just gonna do a Band-Aid.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix that fence for whatever money I can afford in my budget.
We give you whatever you need. That's not
And
an
if
issue.
it exceeds that figure, I'll come back to
Yeah, then you gotta
the
correct
commission for the,
that, Michael, that. Okay,
That's all you have.
yeah,
very good.
Gentlemen, I just noticed that the sheriff's not in here till item 11, next to last. Half was on. We have a guest that he's brought with him this morning. It's been sitting here already for an hour. And I'd like to suggest that we move to the sheriff and allow and take this matter up so he doesn't have to sit here. Right, we're going, we're gonna be, because it'll be 11 o'clock before he gets on.
okay,
So, yeah, is that okay?
yes.
Okay, so if you want to call.
So we'll take up, discussion regarding call clearance, Sheriff.
Good morning, gentlemen. Yes, I asked for this discussion to update you on a meeting that I had with Lieutenant Johnson at the end of last week, and I asked him if he would come and relay basically the same information that he did to me and answer any questions commissioners may have. He graciously have agreed to do that. So I forwarded you a document, I think it was yesterday, for you to look at, just to highlight what the lieutenant will be speaking about. So if it's okay with you, I'll ask Lieutenant Johnston to come to the podium. And,
Great.
No. Lieutenant?
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning, gentlemen. I appreciate the consideration on moving this up on the agenda. Thank you. So my name is Michael Johnston. I am the commander for the Northern Field Troop of the Maine State Police. And my responsibilities, I oversee uniformed state police operations and services for a 4-county area: Hancock County, Washington County, Piscataquis County, and Penobscot County. And I appreciate the opportunity, the invitation from the sheriff, and the willingness to kind of come in here and speak today. I know this is a very important topic. And my purpose for coming here today is to try to just provide a little bit of context and explanation, and certainly try to be responsive to any questions that you may have on this topic. I know you may or may not have had an opportunity to look at the proposal that I sent to the sheriff. We have been engaged in some discussions. It's important I say at the outset, I appreciate the relationship and partnership that we have with the sheriff's office, and particularly the relationship that I have with Sheriff Kane. I'm relatively new to this area, although I've been with the state police for 21 years. But we value that partnership, and which is why I'm here today, to try to be responsive to any questions. But Sheriff Kane has been excellent to deal with, and it's important that we try to maintain those partnerships as we move forward. So I'll certainly, I'm happy to talk about why I'm here today, but if there's any questions or anything that you gentlemen had off the top, I certainly be willing to try to answer those.
Oh, okay, well,
Sorry, sir.
I was looking for more of an in-depth explanation on exactly what you're doing, but
Well, and I'm happy to do that. I didn't kind of want to drone on. Let me talk a little bit about kind of what's in the proposal and kind of how we got here today.
Okay.
And you may be aware of some of this, and I know we have one commissioner that certainly has, in his prior life, a very unique historical perspective on this matter. So he certainly had the benefit of that historical perspective, which I understand and appreciate. So right now, the state police is undergoing an unprecedented staffing issue. Over the years, we have had an expansion in our mission without a commensurate increase in headcount. And if we were fully staffed, I think we would still have a challenge. We've actually shrunk in headcount since the 70s for various different reasons, which I won't go into. But that issue has been exacerbated by the retirement eligibility of large state police classes that are now eligible to retire. And we are facing significant vacancies now. I know this is a public meeting. I'm certainly not trying to be withholding, but I don't want to go into the exact vacancies. That might be more appropriate for like an executive session. But we have significant vacancies in the state police. And what we're trying to do is work with our partners to try to identify cooperatively with them what the state police right now is in the best position to provide for resources, and try to work with them to try to provide the best possible service that we can to the citizens of Hancock County, but also we have a statewide mission that we're responsible for. So my job as a troop commander is to balance what the statewide mission of the state police is, while also what my responsibilities are to these 4 counties. And right now, we have a very difficult time staffing these call sharing agreements. And because our specialty mission has expanded with our major crimes, our tactical team, a lot of the other specialty services, those draw upon the field troops and the uniformed troopers to serve in those roles. And because we have such a staffing issue, we have an inability to backfill a lot of those vacancies that occur when there's a specialty mission. And I'll use as an example, because I think it kind of illustrates the point. Last November, we had a very serious call at the MDI school where there was a credible threat. And our state police tactical team responded to assist MDI in Bar Harbor and also the Hancock County Sheriff's Office with that incident. We also had computer crimes resources, cell phone resources, and that's important. That's what we should be doing. That draws troopers from their patrol assignments from across the state. And because of our staffing issues, we have an inability to really backfill those patrols. And so what that causes is us having to force troopers out, which we're doing at an unprecedented rate now, but we're canceling days off. Or we have to pull a trooper, let's say from Penobscot County, central Penobscot County, to go down to Hancock County to patrol that area. And when you're providing rural patrol, geographic stability and familiarization is critically important to providing a service to those local citizens. So, that's all being created by the staffing issue. So we're trying to be honest and upfront with our partners, trying to identify, this is what we think we're in the best position to provide. Right now, based on our staffing, try to work cooperatively with them, looking at this more as a resource agreement than a call sharing agreement. And obviously the state police, we're trying to address the issues we have now, but I think we all know that we're in a very difficult recruiting environment for law enforcement across the country for various different reasons. That's certainly, we're no exception to that recruiting challenge. That's affecting us the way it is other agencies. And, there's no such thing as a shake and bake police officer or a shake and bake trooper. To the extent you can get a qualified applicant through the door and they can get through the training, you're looking at a potential year and a half before they're potentially ready to go out there. And we're trying to be creative and identify ways that we can address the recruiting. issues, but that's more of a mid to long-term solution. So we know that a lot of these critical services that we're providing statewide to communities and counties across the state, whether they're statutorily obligated like commercial vehicle, where we're the only people who can provide that, whether it's our major crimes unit with homicides. You take a county like Washington County that's had an unprecedented violence in the past year and a half. Those cases require more. And those are services that we know that when communities call and rely on us, we can't say no to. We can't fail in those areas. And so it's causing us to have to revisit some of these agreements and try to work with our partners, understanding that it can create some challenges for them. That is certainly not lost on us. But it's important for us to come here and let you know that we are not pulling out of counties. That is absolutely not what we're doing. We're still committed to providing rural patrol services. It may not be within the confines of a strict call sharing agreement. It may look a little different, particularly right now, based on the staffing issues that we have. But we are absolutely committed to providing resources to the communities across the state and trying to work with our partners as best we can. So this is not us abandoning the county. This is not us pulling out of the county. This is not us saying the state police is not doing rural patrol, but we're having to prioritize what it is that we can do right now, and to ensure that we're communicating that to our partners so they understand what that potential impact could be.
You mentioned statutorily required to do. I mean, I'm fairly new, so I don't understand, what even our obligations are, and certainly don't understand what your obligations are. But are you statutorily required to provide any rural patrol?
So the short answer would be yes. So we have, if you look at the state police organization and duties, you'll find them under Title 25 Maine revised statutes. Usually 1501 and 1502 are the two relevant statutes. Obviously, the sheriff's department falls under Title 38. That's both municipal and sheriff's department. And that defines, it's pretty vague. The statute was created decades ago. And it talks about what our roles and responsibilities are. It didn't contemplate call sharing. I think call sharing was certainly a good idea at the time. But it does talk about us primarily trying to patrol those areas outside that don't have their own organized police departments. But obviously, this statute doesn't have to be through call sharing. But we have other statutory responsibilities that we have. Obviously, the Attorney General's is by statute responsible for the investigation of homicide. They have designated 3 law enforcement agencies that are essentially primary: the state police, Bangor PD, and Portland PD. So we're responsible for suspicious deaths under the death investigation protocol. We're responsible for homicides. Obviously, our major crimes unit, in addition, does other investigations, sex crimes investigations, child abuse investigations, things like that. You look at our commercial vehicle enforcement division. That's something the state police uniquely provides. You look at all the other support services that the state police provides that isn't necessarily a uniform patrol, like running the Maine Motor Vehicle Inspection Program. That is all done by the Maine State Police, in addition to some other kind of behind the curtain services that aren't, you don't necessarily aware of, like the State Bureau of Identification, the Maine State Police Crime Laboratory. Those are all things that the state police provides, as well as a lot of our specialty teams, which I've indicated in that proposal, because some that may not be familiar, sir, to your point about what is it exactly the state police does, like, for example, our tactical team. We have a bomb team, we have K9, we have crash reconstruction. And certainly some of these services, the counties and towns provide for themselves as well. So we're there either to supplement or bolster those services. Some of them, the counties don't provide them, and it may not make sense for them to provide them because of a cost issue or just a resource issue, like a tactical team, which with some exceptions is a resource that that the communities across the state rely on. We have an incident management assistance team. We have a crowd management team. So in the summer of 2020, we had 20 to 25 troopers that were down in Portland, Maine for an entire week. That's troopers that are being pulled for patrol slots in areas to go down there and try to assist those communities. So that's just an example of some of the things that the state police have developed over time to try to recognize the need and meet the demand for what services are needed statewide. In addition, obviously, we exclusively patrol the interstate highway system and the Maine Turnpike.
So, and the reason I'm asking the question is, I think from just the, the studying that I've done, which is limited, is that we have overlapping statutory responsibilities to some areas. Now, I haven't figured out where those areas are yet, but it sounds like that's the case. I don't know if you would agree with that. but-
I would, sir. I think that's an astute assessment that there is some overlap there. And I think and I'm sorry to be to cut you out, but I think you are correct. And I think when resources are tight, we're trying to identify, are there redundant services where for right now, we're in the best position to focus on this, and maybe the sheriff's department might be in a better position to focus on that.
So, because we face the same staffing issues, I think every police department
Sure.
does. And so what's tough for us is if in those areas where there's overlap, if one entity has to take all of it, whatever the entity is, whether it's you or the sheriff's department, then that creates the burden on that agency, and provide some relief to the other one. And I guess we just have to figure out how do we balance that? And, maybe you could speak to that. That's where I'm having trouble. It sounds like we were on, as far as call sharing, again, it sounds like we were evenly doing it. I don't know if that's accurate.
Well, I certainly would defer to Sheriff Kane on a little bit of the more recent historical perspective, as well as Commissioner Clark probably has some unique insight on it. My understanding is that at one point, the state police, the Hancock County was divided into 3 patrol areas. And at one point, the state police used to cover 2 of those patrol areas. And then in the most recent call sharing adjustment, we dropped down to covering 1 patrol area, and the Hancock County Sheriff's covered 2 patrol areas. So there has been an adjustment, and I want to say that adjustment might have been in 2019. I don't know exactly the date, but our staffing obviously has gotten significantly worse. And I think I touched on this, but back when we entered into these agreements, our specialty mission or our major crimes mission was not as expansive, and the demand for those services were not like they are now. And when you look at the number of calls and activations, and these aren't us, some of those are state police supported calls. Many of them are not. They are other towns and communities that we are going to support. And that has increased significantly. And then when you combine that with the manpower issue, that is why there are cracks in the foundation. So to your point, sir, I know that that's an issue that we want to try to work cooperatively, but I also understand your point that if we're not going to be able to stay in these call sharing agreements, we want to be in rural patrol, we want to continue to help out based on our current resources. I certainly understand the sheriff's position, in you gentlemen, your position, and the budget committee for Hancock County. But we feel it's important to try to be honest, work with our partners as best we can, try to be responsive, but we don't want the next call from Chief Willis to say, can you please send a TAC team, and us to say, no, or we can only send half the team because we're trying to fill patrol slots, or we're inversing at a rate that we're canceling days off, and not that better another agency suffered than us. That's certainly not our point. We're trying to evaluate what can we reasonably do while maintaining the safety of our people and the effectiveness of these services.
But there's really 2 categories though in your specialization people and whatnot. Those specifically assigned to specialized tasks such as scales. That's all they do. They don't answer complaints. They do, your detectives take care of your homicides. They should get crowd traffic control from these troopers and whatnot. But then you have this list of specialized people like K9, Long Squad. These people are rural patrol troopers who are called into service as needed, correct?
Yes, I would say that's essentially correct for the most part.
Okay,
These,
so what are these, this other category, what are these troopers doing when they're not on a bomb call, or they're not on a canine call? They're not asked to perform their specialty service, they're just they're on duty trooper. So what are they doing? In Hancock County, what is it? I suspect we have troopers in Hancock County who have specializations.
we do,
Yeah.
we do.
Okay, so what are those,
Not many, but we do.
of those who specialize, what are they doing in Hancock County when they're not on a specialized task? Are they,
I mean,
available-
what did you ask, is your question, sir? I just want to make sure I answer. What are they doing now?
are they available to handle routine calls?
Like rural patrol.
Right.
Are they, if we get a criminal mischief and whatnot, and the deputies are tied up, and the troopers over there running radar, can he break free and handle?
That is what we're struggling right now, to fill these calls and this call sharing, where you have these calls that come in. I am consistently sending troopers from Penobscot to try to fill holes in Washington, in Hancock County. And sometimes I have to send a Hancock County trooper to Penobscot County. So that's the challenge.
And I'm aware that call sharing is going to be a thing of the past. But my point is that we still have troopers in Hancock County working. And to what extent can we ask you people, when they're not doing anything else except radar or something else, to handle a routine call? Are they going to still be available? We're not asking you to bring a trooper out of Penobscot. We're not asking you, we're just saying, you're in Penobscot running radar, can you break free and handle this criminal mischief?
Yeah,
Is
so the short answer is certainly, to the extent that we have staffing and resources, if the sheriff's department were to reach out to us and say, can you please assist us? Then we certainly would make every effort to do that. It might be outside the bounds of what this current call sharing looks like, which is more structured. And obviously, if it's an emergency call, then we drop everything and we come from all over to help. But, one of the things that I've tried to propose is, like what our troopers are doing now, is taking on a greater percentage of Department of Health and Human Services, child abuse investigative referrals, and having uniformed troopers absorb that work, which we're absorbing now because our major crimes is. So maybe evening that out. So we're taking half of it and the sheriff's department is taking half, because right now they're taking more because they cover more area. Or one of the things that I think in conversation with Sheriff Kane is, we know that there's a value in not just running radar, but having strategic, focused, high visibility traffic enforcement in some of these areas. That instead of having a police officer between calls, maybe pull over a car here or there, because oftentimes they don't have the time to dedicate to traffic enforcement, and traffic fatalities is a significant issue within the county and across the state, then if he receives a complaint or request for traffic enforcement, then he can refer those matters to us for more of an organized operational response in that area, looking at high crash areas, using data from Bureau of Highway Safety, doing dedicated enforcement on 166 down through Castine, on Route 1A. And that is something that maybe his department, because they're busy, doesn't have the time to do. I certainly don't want to speak for him, but if he's getting a call or request, then that is something that you can refer to the state police. To the extent that his agency is available and would like, we'll certainly do joint enforcement, but have more targeted enforcement of those areas to try to improve traffic safety. Not just a trooper out just randomly running radar, but have more of a focused approach.
This is so ironic, because 20-some years ago, and Hancock County, by the way, was the pilot project. for
Yes,
voluntary.
I know that.
Yeah, and so anyways, it's ironic because the two common themes back then by the state police was, A, we don't want to be known as only a highway patrol. We want to be able to be a full service and whatnot. And to do that, and they weren't getting criminal complaints because the sheriff's department was coming before RCC. They were all coming to the sheriff's department, and sheriff's department was handling it. And it's interesting because within that first year, Lieutenant, the state police had to come to the realization their troopers didn't know how to do criminal investigations. A sergeant came to the chief deputy back then and shortly after that and said, "Help me, please. I've got a bomb scare at the Stonington High School. I don't know how to handle it." And so be careful what you wish for, because if you get out of the business of handling routine complaints, I'm wondering how many of your prospective applicants want to be a highway patrolman as opposed to a full-service police officer. And B, I want to be back where you were 25 years ago as being a highway patrol officer and not a full service agency.
Sure. I appreciate the point and the perspective. I think it's well put. Is the state police going to have to identify new ways to develop our people outside the confines of structured call sharing? Not resource, because I think there's still the opportunity to share resources. But, you know, that is something that we're dealing with a number of challenges and a number of different fronts we're going to have to address. This is not something where we're moving to a highway patrol, despite our having maybe an increased focus on traffic enforcement, which I think is absolutely necessary. We're still maintaining those investigative elements, and obviously we have our specialty mission. But I understand your point, Sheriff, and that's something that as an agency at a command level that we're going to need to address.
And I'm also concerned that one thing that call sharing did relieve, and that was a deputy going by a trooper, getting to a complaint, not knowing the trooper was in the area and could have handled that complaint.
Another fair point. I think nothing is going to be a substitute for good communication and coordination at the road level. And it may start with a simple where if I'm able to staff someone in Hancock County, because I'm not abandoning this county. There are other counties we don't have much of a presence because we've had to pull those resources to other counties, staff call sharing. We would certainly make sure that the dispatch center, that the sergeant and lieutenant knows that there's a trooper in that area, so they're aware of it, have situational awareness. Certainly, if we had a trooper that's out patrolling and they're right near a complaint that comes in, it makes complete sense for us to step up and take that complaint and handle that complaint to try to eliminate, like you said, where there's a crisscrossing. I don't have enough troopers for that to be a problem in Hancock County. I'm not going to give you the exact numbers, sir. You may know it. I don't anticipate that's going to be an issue with the number of troopers that I have currently living and working in Hancock County. But I think there's no substitute for good communication and collaboration with our partners as we try to figure this out to make sure that does not happen.
Lastly, and I think we got to move on, but I can tell you that there is certain sentiment on this board right here that the Hancock County taxpayer is not going to be 100% responsible for all of the rural law enforcement. There may be days when somebody just is not available or your complaint does not get answered. So the public needs to understand that, because if we can't collaborate and work together to get all of this done, some of it may never get done, because we're not going to double the sheriff's force on the backs of the taxpayer in Hancock County because we don't have anybody to collaborate with. So
Sheriff, do you see, where do you see the holes happening? And I'm not asking you, because I think that's a sort of a joint answer.
Sure.
I guess I don't know what you mean.
Well, so if, you know, this proposal were to, I mean, this is a back of the napkin proposal at this point, it sounds like.
Well, I mean, it's not a formal, but it's a little more than that. But I understand your point.
Yeah, I mean, where does this create holes, you know, given this? Where does this create holes and
Well, the biggest issue is obviously manpower. Commissioner Clark is stated, you know, we don't want to go on the back of the taxpayer anymore. There are bills on the legislature that who knows where the heck they're gonna go, where funds may be allocated to towns and counties to help with that issue, but I don't put a lot of faith on a lot of positive things coming out of Augusta right now. So I guess to answer your question, what happens if the more we take on for rural patrol, that means it's more on the back of the patrolmen. And they're pretty damn busy right now, so you're gonna overwork them to the point where they're gonna say, I just not gonna do this anymore. So you're probably gonna lose some staff at some point. And gonna have to look and see what we handle for complaints. Maybe that we're not gonna handle this type of complaint or that kind of complaint. And that obviously will start an uproar. And,
I mean, like Lieutenant mentioned, it sounds like it was divided into three, I forgot what.
actually, it was 4, Commissioner. I think Commissioner Clark, remember when we first started, we had 4 slots. And then that was too difficult for both agencies to cover, and then we broke it back down into 3. So the majority of the time, we've had call sharing agreements. We've had these 3 slots, we've got slot 1, 2, and 3.
And excuse me, and the majority of those times, Lieutenant, I was under the impression that there was a day shift and a night shift. There was 3 slots a day equals 42 slots a week. lieutenant and the lieutenant would sit down each week and figure out how many of those 21 would go to the state police and which one of the 21s do you want, which can I do? And for several years, that's how we worked on sharing that. Is that correct?
Exactly, and the beauty part of that was we were able to eliminate a lot of travel miles. For example, I lived over in slot 1, 99.9% of the time, I was assigned to slot 1 because I lived there and my response time was better than sending me to slot 2, sending me from Brooksville to Route 9. So we had that ability and that flexibility. They were split out and the same thing with state police. They would sit down, supervisors would sit down and say, okay, I've got Scott's working today. Okay, he'll take care of slot 1. And then lieutenant's got somebody that's in slot 3 working today. Okay, we'll assign him to slot 3. So it worked very, very well for a long time.
So today, are there 3 slots
3, correct.
and state police cover half and we cover half?
Right now, oops, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, we cover a third, they cover 2/3.
Okay,
So we take 2 slots day and night and they take 1 slot day and night.
okay, and that's what you see going with.
Yes, that is the difficult thing we have right now, to try to say we can commit to covering 1 slot 24/7, 365. That is the challenge that we are faced with right now, based on our staffing.
Okay, so what does that look like for the sheriff's department? So now you have,
Instead of having 2 deputies work, we're gonna have 3. So we'll have to look at what the manpower situation.
Well, the 2 deputies handle the entire county. There's no more slots. Once this call sharing agreement goes away, there's no more slots. In other words, and the problem for us gentlemen is that the RCC is run by the county. So that means every call comes to the county. So if the county is unable to handle that complaint because the state police isn't available and the sheriff doesn't have anybody available and whatnot, it's the county that get kicked in the butt, it's not the state police. So, it's what we have to look at, and it's quite subjective though, it's the staffing level the sheriff is going to need to handle the entire county. And as far as resources, the biggest resource we need in Hancock County on an ongoing basis is canine. We don't need dive teams. I mean, the state police, the Marine Patrol, everybody has a dive team. We don't need that.
Yeah, we're a joint team with Marine Control, but you're right.
Yes. What we need, and we have it ourselves,
Yes.
we have accident reconstruction, we have DRE people and so on. So, and those are the things that we need more often. When there is a major incident that requires the TAC team, we look to the state police, and whether we have a resource agreement in place or not, you're gonna come.
Right, and we want to continue to provide those services.
So I'm not quite sure what this resource agreement's all about, as opposed to a resource, in other words, an information on what resources we provide. Are you signing some kind of
No.
document?
No.
No, okay.
So Lieutenant sent me this as a proposal and thought and an idea.
well,
That-
start somewhere.
Sure, exactly. And in defense of Lieutenant Johnston, he hasn't been there long. We've developed a very good working relationship. I think he's honest with me when information is coming. He does his best to get that information to us as soon as we can. The other thing that's good that we've been able to rely upon when we were 50/50, when, for example, if we wanted a training day, or if we wanted a day for our Christmas party, and likewise with them, we communicate and we say, okay, we'll take the county all day shift today, so the troopers can go to firearm training, or vice versa. So we had that. So those are little bugs and things gonna have to work out. We've already discussed in our firearms training will be coming up soon, as soon as we get the rest of the equipment that we're supposed to have. And Lieutenant Johnson shared with me that he has more troopers working on a certain day, and if we could schedule our firearms training on that day, it would be easier for his organization to cover those complaints. So we communicate on a regular basis. It's just a matter of solving the magic problem. Where do we find all the people and at what cost?
So where I'm struggling, I'm getting back to those slots, so, so there's gonna be basically if you put them all together, there's a 2-person shortage, right? So who's statutorily obligated to do that? I guess, are we, or, that's where I'm having trouble.
Well, I can tell you that the statute doesn't require the sheriff to provide all of that. What it says is you provide service to the level that your budget permits. So if his budget doesn't allow him to have what he thinks is a minimum of 3 per shift, then that's not a violation of the statute. That's going to be a, a political and a moral issue that we have to have to deal with the citizens.
Well, I mean, let's take a couple of communities, and I'm not gonna mention them here, that have their own police department, but they're not staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So we have been covering, and the state police have been covering when they had a slot, these communities, and it may be one of those things that unfortunately, the political thing is gonna have to come and say, listen, you've got a police department, you're gonna have to cover your own complaints.
But so
Which we deal with, the sheriff's right, we deal with that with Callis right now. And I just met with them 2 weeks ago. We're dealing that up north with Van Buren and Limestone. When they fold, we were never meant to provide municipal police services. That's not what the state police was.
And the problem with that is they're used to a level of service they don't want to decrease.
Right,
They
but-
they still want their dog complaints and they still want their,
They do, and so we've had to draw the line, say we will respond to emergent calls only. And we try to encourage these communities to invest in themselves. I realize it's easier said than done, but, and I know we touched on this, but, I'm trying to look at what's in the best interest of the citizens. That's both
Yeah.
we agreed that Mr. and Mrs. John and Susie Q. Public do not care who comes to handle their complaint. All they want is a professional solution to the problem. And, but when I'm sending a trooper from Central Penobscot to Deer Stonington to cover burglary, I have to ask myself, what service am I providing to the residents and citizens of that county? And what am I risk jeopardizing if we continue to do that we'll have to say, no, we're not doing?
So when's call sharing ending? When's that done?
I don't know if that's the way to put it, but when is the availability of the state police gonna be a little less than what it is right now? I guess that's Lieutenant Johnston.
Are you still prepared to supply a trooper for each day slot and night slot? Is that what?
Well, I mean, so if you're quite, right now we're having a hard time doing that now.
I know, but when you're not able to do that, you're bringing in people from away. Is that correct? Are you
Consistently.
going to pull the plug on call sharing at some point?
Well, so I don't want to be cute with my answer. I want to try to be, so what I'm saying is I look at these as resource agreements, to your point. A portion of that resource agreement is how calls are handled and how the zones are divided up. If you look at our agreement now, portion of that talks about how will calls be handled and how will staffing of the zones. And there's other things in there beside that. We would like to keep those resource agreements in place and maybe use this proposal back of the napkin as a way to say what else should be in there. But that portion that talks about having a trooper committing to saying we're going to be there 24/7, 365, that is what we're looking to say. We may have to take that out for right now, keep the other things in place. So it's memorialized that there's an understanding when you call us, we will continue to provide these services. And, that's what I'm trying to work with the sheriff to say, the absence of that part of that agreement, can we still have a resource agreement, not a call sharing? So I don't know if that answers your
Well,
question.
I'm looking at Bob Connery, director of the SEC. Now, if he thinks there is a call sharing agreement in place and at one slot, the day slot, for slot 3 is state police, you don't have anybody, you're not going to bring anybody up from Newport to cover it and whatnot, and Bob thinks you are. The problem for us is, Lieutenant, is that they called the county for response, and when you didn't go to that, whatnot, they blame the county for not responding to their complaint.
That's what we're trying to, so right now it's business as usual, Sheriff, even though I think the agreement we have right now, I think it may have technically expired. We're operating under that agreement and keeping it in place. I'm trying to engage the sheriff to come up with a plan to try to transition, but for right now, it's business as usual, despite the difficulties. We are staffing those patrol slots right now, Commissioner. This is part of trying to engage with the sheriff, be transparent upfront, to say we need to try to work towards something. There is some urgency, but we realize this is not a light switching overnight. And to make sure that if we are able to come up with something, that obviously we communicate that to the RCC so there's clarity. But this isn't us saying we're pulling the plug tomorrow, not at all. We're continuing to abide by this agreement, but we're starting to take the necessary steps to engage with our partners and all of you to kind of, so you have an understanding of where things are at.
My suggestion has been right along, is the funding coming from? We take the commissioner, we take the colonel, we take the president of the Maine Sheriff's Association, someone from Maine County Commissioners, someone from Maine Municipal, lock them in a room, keep them there, no food, no bathroom breaks until they come up on how we're gonna fund this.
Well, what I'm having trouble with, it's because I don't understand it. It's not because you've left anything out, is that call that comes in, we can't answer. Okay. Is the state police statutorily responsible for taking that call? If
Too
they-
bad, too bad to say that. In other words, the sheriff says, answering that call is beyond the ability of my budget to provide. State police said, this is ambiguous, this archaic law that's on the book that says we have to provide words. The bottom line is that you repeat that question to death and there's no answer.
We can point the finger at them, they can point the finger at us, and we still.
That doesn't do anything.
It's not citizen,
Yeah.
because somebody didn't respond.
You know, and I know the public, you know, to the extent they know about it, they expect us to kind of figure this out. We understand that this is a challenging situation and this is the risk of sounding like it's a sob story. We have bare bones, pull people out of task force. We don't have any, you know, other than what we feel are the basic public safety services we need to provide. There are people in MDA. I had to cut my troop investigator program. So now I have troopers that are handling cases that had formerly been done by, so we're operating at levels that we've never operated at before. And it's affecting other areas that affect our statewide mission.
Well, and it's for lieutenant, anytime that since I've been sheriff, that we have called for specialty services, TAC team, weights, those types of things. There's been no questions, just they're on the way. So when he's saying they do have these specialties, they do. And they're very professionally run and they work well with the local aid, certainly with our agency anyway. So, and none of those specialties are we even remotely interested in getting involved with because as the lieutenant said, the cost of them, manpower issue and those types of things. So.
Well, and demand's up, the people are down. I mean, you know, tough. We're all figuring this
I think we've been sufficient.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. We didn't mean to be.
No. I'm certainly happy to come back. I'll work with the sheriff, but I appreciate the opportunity and time. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
thank
want to
you.
thank you publicly too
All
for
right.
taking
Thank
the
you,
time.
Commissioner. I appreciate it. All right. Good to meet you, sir. Hey, Commissioner, good to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Can we take a break?
Yeah.
I know these guys have been sitting there all long.
Take a, yeah, 3 minute, 5 minute break.